Okay, I'd like to introduce our first artist for the Camino Lago public art presentations, and the first artist we have today is Gary Slater from Tempe, Arizona.
I want to thank you for inviting me to be a finalist in this competition again. I really love the setting here. It's incredible settings, very well done, beautiful place. I've been over and visited the site a couple times, and in a few minutes when we get the tech stuff all up and running, you'll see these pieces in the circle out there. So you get a good idea of the location and the setting and the how it's going to look, if I'm chosen, how it's going to look in the final analysis. The most important person in this room is not me, it's Tex. And you can always tell he's a cowboy because he's got his hands in his back pockets, as opposed to politicians who always have their hands in your pockets. But anyway, this is Tex. He is 6 feet tall, actually a little bit over that because he's got his hat on. But if Tex was real and these were full scale, he is 6 feet tall. This is 12 feet tall. This is a little over 18 feet, 18 inches for the pedestal base. And the reason I did these full scale pretty much, I had a terrible time. I made the small wooden models and they just didn't have the character. You'd have to do a lot of imagining to imagine this. The colors, the cutouts, the wrinkled copper. This is copper in here. You'd have to do a lot of real imagining to see it from a small wooden model. So I made these small scale first, and then I thought, you know what, I'm just going to jump off the deep end and do them at a scale where you can really see what the metal looks like, what the colors might look like, what the copper is going to look like, and what the glass might look like. And the reason I have two of them is because, again, I thought I was just torn. I didn't know if you wanted something really tall or something with a little more bling, a little glass. And so I thought, I'll just present them both, and I'll kind of leave it up to you. If I'm chosen, you could choose one or the other, so that I've covered my bases in terms of size and maybe a little bit of sparkle. I'm a traditional sculptor. I like form more than blinking lights. I've done the city of Scottsdale and Tempe and Chandler. Sometimes they have me do installations for other artists, young kids who don't know what they're doing, basically. They hire me to install their sculptures because I've got insurance and all that stuff. And they bring over stuff with LED lights and solar panels and things that they're very up to date and cool and everything, but I'm not quite there. I'm still kind of old school. This is pure form. My tradition, all the sculptures here it comes up on the screen now. Traditionally, I do form sculpture. I don't do a lot of glitzy stuff. This is probably one of the most glitzy pieces I've ever done. So I don't want to say new age, but this is a little more forward than I usually do. So we have these two possibilities. So I don't know, what you're looking for. It's, my thought was you've got a tall one out here already. I have 1,000 ideas. I went through probably 1,000 ideas before I got here. Went through all my old, my history of all my work. I've done a lot of tall pieces. I've done a lot of painted pieces. I've done a lot of stainless pieces. You've seen those in the preliminary judging. So I've done all that stuff before, but when I filtered it all down, I thought that one of these would be the best for me for this site, and maybe for you for this site. So had a lot of history to go through to arrive at this. Of course, this one, if it's 18 feet tall, will not turn. Will not turn. That is simply what I did for you to look at it here. Either one of these pieces is pretty much indestructible. The only drawback, when I say indestructible, the only drawback is the glass. I mean, there's always the potential, if some idiot wanted to, could damage the glass. So there's, as much as I love the glass, there is a slight downside to that. On the other hand, I'm not aware of any major art pieces ever having been destroyed because of the material or anything else. So depending upon how it's actually placed in the circle, and depending upon, you know, how much you want people to access the piece, maybe that's not the best piece. I don't know. It's a matter of you know what you want to have the public do in terms of being close to the piece. I mean, this piece, you could climb on it all day long and you can't hurt it. Be Corten steel, and it'll rust just like this. This is the early stage of rust. Eventually it'll be dark brown when it's all done, like rust always is. The copper will be dark brown, very much like this. Might be a little green on it, but not much, if any. Copper doesn't normally turn green all by itself. It takes a lot of acid and nasty rainwater and junk like that. It takes interaction with air and water simultaneously. But most of the time when copper is left by itself, it just turns brown. You see all the copper rooftops around the valley. Most of them are brown. The ones that are green are made green with chemicals. And I can do that as well. I can make that green in 5 minutes if you want me to. So, you know, that's a possibility. This one, this is the early stage of copper. It's just pink. It'll turn brown. It'll be as brown as this. So there'll be a good contrast between these two. Oh, here's another. There we go. This is one of the other pieces I was considering. This was a new piece. I thought it might be appropriate for the circle out there. This is another piece I considered strongly. It would have been about 12 feet tall minimum. And again, user-friendly, interactive, indestructible, and all that. So I went through, you know, these. This is an earlier piece. This is, you know, several years old. I've always been aching to make this piece very tall, and very big, and very public, but I have never gotten to that point where it's been able to show it for that. I did make these especially for that site. These are brand new. I decided not to go back and try to reconstruct these earlier pieces. I decided to make something brand new for that site. I've done this piece called Link about, I think I've done it 10 times, small scale, out of bronze, and I've sold them. So it does have, you know, that history to it, but I've never made it any bigger than the small model size. But going back to these, anyway, it's they're heavy plate steel. They're not going to be lightweight. They're not going to be flimsy. Very heavy, and you know, you could hit them with a sledgehammer. They're not going to even dent. So it's heavy steel. I don't know. Earlier pieces, another link up there. Yeah, that's similar to the small link piece. This is link number 2, which that's my son standing next to it, and it was actually, well, he sure looks short and fat there. It actually is 12 feet tall. It's on a pedestal when it was finally installed. So it's a pleasure talking to you. Thanks.
Our next artist in our Camino Lago public art presentations is Cecilia Luisa from Miami, Florida, is presenting her project. It's a team project. Her and her husband are presenting today.
Okay, our vision for Camino Lago Park is, is a beautiful yet meaningful and engaging public art installation that creates a unique identity and sense of place for the park. The inspiration comes from the hummingbird and the fact that many species of them live and thrive in Arizona. And so the sundial will be located at the Site E, which is the Sunset Catcher Plaza. And it will be comprised of, as you can see, well, you can go ahead and you can see in the model here, it will comprise of a circular mosaic type background representing a desert landscape at sunset. And the main element of the sundial is the gnomon, which in this case takes a form of a hummingbird in flight that seems to be to sip from a flower sprouting from the desert. And besides creating a welcoming focal point for the park, the sundial will, we think, we will provide opportunity for the community to better understand nature, the changing seasons, the passing of time, the solar system in a hands-off manner. And we think that children and adults that visit the park will be able to interact with the sundial, with the artwork, and while learning how it works. So about materials, go ahead.
I'll pass these around for you folks to take a look at. The mosaics will be made out of sintered glass tile. They're Italian made, super high quality. They're made with recycled glass and oxides of different colors. They would be installed with, there's approximately 150,000 pieces, individual pieces, that would go into this piece. And
you can see it here too, if you want, with some description, sorry.
They last virtually forever. They have no fading, no UV degradation or anything. They're really nice tiles. I mean, you can see, you can get the texture and feel. They would be mixed, even though the shiny ones are used in malls throughout basically the country and throughout the world, on floors, in many commercial applications. We would mix the shiny ones with some that, there's a couple samples in the cup that are a little, how should I say, they're not
Non-shiny.
they're not shiny as much. Yeah, they're a little sandy kind of, to give a better grip, just in case there's like there's a lot of water happening and stuff. We would not have any problems with people slipping on them. Also, the grout, being that there's so many grout lines in there, that also helps in controlling slipping. The aluminum inserts, what is the numbers, letters, and the bands, will be made out of 1/4-inch aluminum. The gnomon, the hummingbird, will also be made out of heavy gauge 1/4-inch aluminum plate. So if somebody wants to jump on it or whatever, climb on it, it's perfectly, it'll be a very robust design. It'll be perfectly capable of safe and capable of withstanding interaction with the public. And it's also a working sundial. So you can go to Google Earth and take a look, and you can know what time the satellite took the picture, you know. 'Cause it's got the date on there, but it never has a time, you know. So hey, look what time it was. And keep in mind, it's solar time, or God's time. We have daylight savings time, and we go back and forth here. This obviously will always stay at solar time, which is the correct time.
So does Arizona, never changes its clock.
You guys never change the clock? There you go.
That's
Okay.
great.
So
That's wonderful.
you don't have a problem.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, we just installed installed one half of this size in Washington D.C. A month and a half ago, and at a school over there, and that was really neat. People are looking, oh my God, look, it's actually on time. Yeah, that's the idea. What else?
Well, the timeline for fabrication, how long it's gonna. Oh, feel
yeah,
free
please.
to keep changing the slides. Okay.
That 17 is actually
That's the
18 feet.
dimensions.
We just measured it, and it's exactly 18 feet on the dot there, so it'll be a little bigger. The gnome on the bird itself would be 11 and a half feet from point to point, 7 feet 10 inches, almost 8 feet tall, and 1 foot thick.
It's an approximate idea of the scale, how people look around the artwork, and then materials.
It's 50-52 heavy gauge aluminum plate, 1/4 inch thick. These are examples of this tile in malls.
Floor applications, commercial flooring applications. They're used to, for entryways and big areas.
Yeah, not
throughout.
only are they used on floors, but also on walls, columns, facades of buildings. This is the one we did in Washington, D.C. Not the same tile. These are 1 inch by 1 inch tiles.
Bigger tiles.
But you can get an idea. It was 11 o'clock right there.
Yeah. Also inspired by birds because I love them very much, so that's why.
Talk about birds.
Find
We
a
were
lot of
out there.
inspiration in them.
We were out there taking measurements and looking, and I actually took a picture of this with my watch to see if it was on the money, and it was. And my daughter says, "A hummingbird," and we looked, and there was a beautiful hummingbird going around the yellow flowers there. That was so neat. My wife's from Argentina, and her mother has a garden down there, and she's got hummingbirds in her garden, and it's so beautiful. Beautiful little bird.
So those are, yeah.
Was that it?
Yeah, those are the different steps of the transactions and the password.
Our next and last artist for the Camino Lago public art presentations today is Eileen Gay from Sparks, Nevada. She's presenting her proposal.
Hi, everybody. Hi. Great day, great options here. I've loved everything I've had a chance to sit in and see, which is exciting. Good choices. I thought I would kind of just wander through sort of a review of my past work and little different pictures than what you've seen before, because a lot of the pieces have me in them, so it's a little, I'm the scale object, so it's just a little something. I've won some awards for pieces, pieces that are in place, that have been in place now for at least 10 years. It's one of my favorites. It's the only reason why I own hip waders. Although right now, with the drought, the pond is dry, so yeah, it's kind of a bummer, but. And of course, doing my little media bit, Dedication Day. And some fun stuff. And my latest, my last installation was last fall in Colorado Springs. So, and a little bit about my process. I do everything design-wise as much as I can on paper in front of me first so that I'm not surprised by anything. I like to have all the technical decisions made so that when I get to the point of actually doing the work, I can have some fun. I've solved all the stuff that I needed to be aware of technically, and then I can find things and plug them in. So that's kind of like, this is how it ends up after the process of doing the line art. And this is a flat mosaic, but I do the same thing with 3D stuff. And this is actually the fabrication for the giant poker chips in downtown Reno. And my 3-part panther, which you should never be able to tell is 3 parts, which is the whole point. And a little bit more of me on a ladder, me on a scaffold. It's me. I make this stuff. But I couldn't do it without my spouse because he's my support crew. And this is just doing the last piece of the floor in the project that I did in Colorado Springs. So setting the floor on the site. Outdoors in November. We were blessed with beautiful weather that day, and it snowed the next day. So, yeah, and I've been back to double check because I always worry about installations. You know, I go back within a year, if not sooner, just to make sure everything's okay and I'm available. So, my idea for this project, though, I like to do a little historical research on the area and see what the story might be. And I've been interested in glass and water lately. And so as soon as I found out that Peoria actually got its name because of one of the designers and all of his cohorts who came in and did the irrigation canal systems that controlled the Salt River, to make the area a good agricultural area. No more floods and dry and flood and dry. You could actually control it. So there have been a number of stages, but I think it was in the 4th stage of doing irrigation designs in this area that William John Murphy, who was from Peoria, was brought out as an engineer to design the irrigation project at that phase, and then went back to Peoria and brought all his friends. And of course, that's how Peoria got its name, was a ton of people from Peoria ended up here. And actually here is bigger than Peoria now, according to what I was reading. The population's bigger. But I got fascinated by the idea that I've always been fascinated by, which is government infrastructure for water. And so what I came up with was what I call Water Works. And it's a sculptural installation. It's celebrating the control of the water in the area. And rather than stick something in the center of the plaza, what I came up with was an idea of offsetting it to the back of the plaza to create this is 4 parts, a storyteller circle. And on the floor of the plaza, I would do a poured concrete, exposed aggregate, and inset mosaic design that represents the canals after the water's been tamed. So it's a flat surface where maybe in the evenings when it's a little cooler, or in the off season when it's a little cooler, or maybe with shade, I'm not sure, but it's a good presentation space. You can have a person that tells stories, shares history. I figure it's near the library, it's near a school. It's a place to interact. And what this does is on the back, there's a representation of, and I'm going way out of my, wait a minute. I get all excited. On the back side, this is all the tributaries coming together, perhaps behind Roosevelt Dam, as an example, gathering up behind the dam where it's controlled by the structure, the gate up at the top, and it flows down into the basin below that's on the floor here and goes out into the canals to be distributed. And this is all mosaic. And it's as you can see, it's 10 feet tall to this portion about here, and has a little bit more height with the mechanism at the top. I'm considering whether that would be steel powder coated or if it's partly mosaic, but I'm kind of leaning towards powder coated steel because it would be a nice, different sort of a texture and structure at the top. And I have all kinds of opportunities to put little goodies that I find on the side here. This is all glass where it's water, on this portion anyway, and high-fired porcelain glazed tile on the rest of the structure. For instance, since this is, to me, this is landscape, I decided on a crazy paving technique where it's all broken tile because it's natural. The rest of it is a more regulated pattern that I would use. And let's see what else I told myself I was going to say. And the materials. I brought some samples, and actually the tape that those previous guys were talking about is this stuff. This is an example of the technique I would use to bring out the panels that I would be insetting in the floor, that you pre-lay in a pattern and then cut up into transportable pieces and then lay in sections. But just because it's easier to look at them that way, that would go on the back wall. The glass that I'm looking at right now, and I know in 6 months' time when I actually get to actually do something, because that's probably how long it'll take to get to that point, there may be a better material that I get excited about, but right now this is pretty much what I'm thinking about as far as colors and material. It's all a recycled glass material. I'm kind of thinking about Andre. It's like, should I peel all these off? This is. I'll hand it around to you anyway. Here's samples of this is probably the size that I would get that in, which is a smaller piece for the glass on the face, for that wonderful translucent kind of a feel. And I would do it in mosaic it in flowing rhythms and intersperse it with a little of this stuff.
This is for where now?
This would be on the face in the water. So it's a little bit of that mixed in with what's going around the other way. And this is another high fire porcelain. This would be the cement kind of a representation. I did not cut that up the way I would because I have to take it back to the store.
Oh, okay, we won't break it.
I was tempted though. And the way that I fabricate the sculptures is I use an expanded polystyrene, or as a lot of folks know it, styrofoam, for the basic structure, and do a couple of layers of acrylic cement that has fiberglass in it, and fiberglass mesh over that. So it's a good hard structure substrate when it's done, and it's nice, real tacky, perfect for doing a tile mosaic on. The great thing about it, especially in your climate, and in mine really, freeze thaw, styrofoam doesn't move. So I pretty much, you can walk out there and even on a hot day, yeah, the tile will pick up the heat, but at the end of the day, it'll cool down really fast too. It's great stuff. I have pieces installed all over the place that have held up really well. I always do a steel infrastructure so that it's not a styrofoam thing coated in cement sitting there. There are pieces I'm planning on a footing. I'll be double checking with an engineer here and to find out what your requirements are, but probably a couple feet below ground, or I think it's 2.5 feet below ground for placing my steel footing. And when we come out to the site, it just sets right down over the poles. It's not going anywhere. It's probably close to a ton when it's finished. That's kind of an idea of kids sitting out there. Maybe they take a story pad to sit on, on a hot day. Maybe there's a shade structure that you guys would consider. I don't know, for the summer. Or maybe that's ridiculous. Maybe it's too hot for shade even. And one of the things that I thought about also was seating, and I just, no matter how I looked at it, I'm not sure I could fit it in my budget. But as an option, I think I threw in some ideas. Insetting stones in the plaza itself at the pour, maybe working with a landscaped architect here or landscape designer, someone who provides that kind of materials already at the park. And there's also some other more structural kind of elements that could be bought and installed in. I checked out pre-poured precast concrete forms that could be inset into the plaza at that same time. That would act as seating if you wanted to have seating there. One of the things I liked about the plaza was it was so big that with this offset a little bit, you had room for people to walk around the back. It's open, you could fill the entire plaza with people if you want to. If you had a musical performer or whatever, it's a backdrop. And at the same time, it's a nod to history, hopefully, in the area. And of course, I'm a really hard worker and I'm dedicated. So no matter what, I'll be in there working on your project, even if it's freezing cold in my studio. But it's not. Usually I'm spoiled.
In conclusion, our activity today included 3 artists making their final presentations for Camino Lago Park. The 3 artists presented their proposals with images, models, and budgets. And we've collected all that information. We have our 4 panelists that did the screening. To screen these finalists are the same panelists now scoring the final presentations, to which we will present to the commission and then to the mayor and the council at a later date.